In this video, we will learn 10 new words through short stories. It might seem like a small step, but in 100 days, you will easily learn 1,000 words, which is a big achievement. To help you learn better, please watch each video twice. At the end of the video, try to make your own sentences using the new words you've learned. Stay with us and let's explore today's new words. The memory that wasn't mine. I woke up with a strange feeling. Something was missing. I looked around my small apartment, trying to recall what I had forgotten. My cognition felt slow, like a machine struggling to start after years of rust. I walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. An empty shelf stared back at me. I frowned. I had gone grocery shopping yesterday. Hadn't I? I grabbed my phone and checked my messages. Nothing unusual, but as I scrolled, I noticed a contact I didn't recognize, Anna. A message from her read, "I hope your cognition is improving. See you at 4. Cognition? Why did that word feel so familiar? I typed it into a search engine. Cognition, the mental process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. A headache pulsed through my skull. Suddenly, a flash of memory hit me, a car accident, bright lights, and then nothing. My cognition had been damaged. I had lost pieces of myself. A knock at the door pulled me back to reality. I hesitated before opening it. A woman stood there, her eyes filled with hope. "Do you remember me?" she asked. I stared at her. My mind searched desperately for an answer. My cognition was failing me again. "Anna," I guessed. She nodded. "Your doctor said you might remember things differently, but you're getting better." I let her in, trying to act normal. As she spoke, fragments of my past returned. We were friends, no more than that. She had been helping me rebuild my cognition after the accident. Every conversation, every moment together was a lesson in remembering who I was. Tears welled in her eyes. "Do you remember the last thing you said to me before the accident?" I shook my head. She smiled sadly. "You said, 'Even if I forget everything, I will never forget you.'" A deep pain spread in my chest. I wanted to remember. I needed to remember. And then, just for a moment, something clicked. A warm afternoon, a park bench, her laughter real, bright, mine to keep. My cognition was healing. Slowly, painfully. But it was healing.
The voice inside me. It was a quiet evening when I walked into the coffee shop. The scent of freshly ground beans filled the air, and the sound of soft jazz music played in the background. But something was different today. I could feel it. My intuition told me something important was about to happen. I sat at my usual table, staring at my phone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. There was something I couldn't explain. My intuition was telling me to look up. When I did, I saw him. A man was sitting across the room, his eyes focused on me, yet somehow distant. Our gazes locked, and I felt an unspoken connection, a strange pull that I couldn't understand. I was drawn to him, but why? What did my intuition want me to do? He stood up, walked toward me, and before I could say anything, he spoke. "I have a feeling you were waiting for me." My heart raced. How could he know? I hadn't said anything, but it felt like I had been waiting for him my whole life. I was shocked. My intuition told me to trust him, to follow this strange moment. How did you know? I asked. He smiled, his eyes softening. Sometimes you don't need words to understand someone. You just feel it. It's like an inner voice, your intuition guiding you to the right moment, the right person. I sat there, stunned. It was like my own intuition had been leading me here, without me even realizing it. I had felt something was going to happen, and it had. The strange thing was, it felt like it wasn't the first time I had met him, even though I was sure it was. As we talked, everything around us seemed to disappear. My intuition told me to keep listening, to trust my heart more than my mind. I couldn't explain why, but I felt safe with him. For the first time in a long while, I stopped questioning my intuition and simply let it guide me. By the end of our conversation, I realized something. My intuition was more than just a feeling. It was a voice I could trust, even when I didn't fully understand it. It was the quiet whisper inside me, always there, always guiding.
When the storm didn't break me. I've always believed that life was like a storm. You can't control the wind or the rain, but you can control how you face it. The last few months have tested my resilience in ways I never imagined. I remember the day I lost my job. It felt like the storm was coming, but I didn't know how bad it would be. I sat there, staring at the empty office, feeling defeated. The words of my boss echoed in my ears. "We have to let you go. It's nothing personal." But it felt personal. I didn't have time to be angry or sad. The bills kept coming, and the pressure only grew. My friends and family kept telling me to stay positive, to keep looking forward. I didn't know how, but my resilience kicked in. I knew I had two choices: stay down or get up. I chose to get up. Every day I pushed myself to apply for jobs, to make phone calls, to stay active. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wanted to give up. But my resilience told me not to stop. There were moments when the weight of failure almost crushed me. I wasn't getting any interviews, and my savings were running out. I felt like the storm was never going to end. But then, something inside me changed. I remembered my father's words, "You're stronger than you think. Resilience is in your blood." I started to see challenges as opportunities. Every rejection, every closed door was just another lesson. My resilience turned into a source of strength. I learned to adapt, to grow, and to keep moving forward. Then, one day, everything changed. I got a call from a company I had applied to weeks earlier. They offered me a job. It wasn't the one I thought I wanted, but it was exactly what I needed. The storm had passed. Looking back now, I realized that my resilience wasn't just about surviving the storm. It was about learning to dance in the rain, to stay strong even when things seemed impossible. Life will always throw challenges our way, but it's how we respond that defines us. The party that changed everything. I used to think I was nothing like John. He was always the center of attention at parties, the guy who made everyone laugh, who had the energy to talk to anyone and everyone. He was the true extrovert. I, on the other hand, preferred to keep to myself, watching from the corner. One Friday evening, John invited me to one of his famous parties. I almost said no. The thought of being around so many people made me uncomfortable. But John wouldn't take no for an answer. "You have to come," he said. "It'll be fun. It's a chance for you to be more like me, an extrovert." I reluctantly agreed, unsure of what to expect. When I arrived at the party, I felt the usual anxiety creeping in. The music was loud, and people were talking everywhere. I stood by the wall, trying to make myself invisible. Then I saw John. He was talking to a group of strangers, making them laugh with ease. I watched, amazed at how naturally he fit in. Later that night, he found me standing alone. "Why are you just standing here?" he asked, his voice full of energy. "Come on, be an extrovert like me. Talk to someone." I felt nervous, unsure of how to start a conversation with someone I didn't know. But John encouraged me, and finally I walked up to a woman I had never met. To my surprise, we clicked instantly. We talked about everything: our favorite movies, books, and even our dreams. The more we talked, the more comfortable I felt. As the night went on, I realized something. Being an extrovert wasn't about being loud or making jokes. It was about being open, connecting with people, and not being afraid to share a part of yourself. John had always been an extrovert, but now, for the first time, I understood what it really meant. By the end of the party, I was talking to everyone. I had made new friends and felt more alive than I had in a long time. I wasn't just standing on the sidelines anymore. I was part of the conversation, part of the group. That night, I learned that being an extrovert wasn't just about being outgoing. It was about embracing the energy of others and not being afraid to show who you truly are.
The quiet strength of being alone. I've always considered myself an introvert. Growing up, I enjoyed spending time alone, reading books or writing in my journal. Social events often left me feeling exhausted, while I saw my friends thrive in large groups. I couldn't understand why they enjoyed being surrounded by so many people. For me, peace came in silence, and I found comfort in my own company. But there was one event that changed how I viewed myself as an introvert. It was my company's annual conference, and it was a big deal. Everyone was excited to meet new people, exchange ideas, and network. I dreaded it. The thought of spending hours in a crowded room made my heart race. I knew I had to go, but I wasn't looking forward to it. The morning of the conference, I stood in front of the mirror, trying to calm my nerves. I felt out of place. The idea of making small talk with strangers seemed overwhelming. I wasn't like the others. I wasn't the life of the party, I wasn't outgoing, and I wasn't an expert at connecting with everyone. I was an introvert, and I was about to face the world of extroverts. As the day went on, I stayed mostly in the background, listening rather than speaking. But then, something surprising happened. A colleague I had never spoken to came up to me, a little hesitant, and asked, "You seem so calm. How do you manage the chaos of all these people?" For the first time, I realized that being an introvert wasn't something to hide. It was my strength. I didn't need to be loud or the center of attention to make a difference. My ability to listen, reflect, and observe was valuable. Quiet moments I enjoyed were the same ones that allowed me to build meaningful connections. As the conference ended, I found myself more comfortable in my own skin. I had spoken with a few people, but in my own way, at my own pace. I learned that being an introvert didn't mean I was less social or less successful. It just meant I needed time to recharge, to reflect, and to connect in a way that suited me. At the end of the day, I realized something important. Introverts bring a unique strength to the world. It's not always about being loud or outgoing, it's about understanding and embracing who we are.
The day I changed my perception. I had always thought I knew everything about my hometown. I grew up here, and every street, every corner felt familiar to me. But one day, something happened that changed my perception of everything around me. It started when I met Sarah, a new coworker who had just moved to our city. She seemed so different from anyone I had ever known. She spoke with such excitement about exploring new places, and when I asked her about her perception of our city, she said, "I think it's beautiful, but I can see there's so much more to discover here." At first, I was confused. To me, the city was just a city. I had seen it all. How could Sarah have a different perception of something I thought I knew so well? She asked me to show her around, and even though I was skeptical, I agreed. As we walked through the streets, Sarah pointed out things I had never noticed before. "Look at the way the sunlight reflects on those old buildings," she said, smiling. "And the way the trees line the street, it's almost like nature and the city are dancing together." For the first time, I saw the city through Sarah's eyes. My perception of it began to shift. I noticed the little details I had overlooked for years: the vibrant colors of the market stalls, the sound of laughter from a nearby cafe, and the peacefulness of the park that I always rushed past. That afternoon, something clicked. It wasn't just the city that had changed. It was my own perception. I realized that by seeing the world through someone else's eyes, I could discover new layers of beauty in the things I thought I knew. I began to understand that perception isn't just about seeing things, it's about how you choose to see them. As I walked home later that day, I felt a new sense of excitement about my surroundings. I wasn't looking at the world the same way anymore. My perception had been broadened, and I felt as though I had opened the door to a new world right in front of me.
The day I found my self-esteem, I always believed that I wasn't good enough. From a young age, I struggled with low self-esteem. I compared myself to others and often felt like I didn't measure up. I thought that my worth depended on how others saw me, so I tried hard to be perfect. But no matter what I did, I always felt like I wasn't enough. One day, things changed. I was sitting in a cafe when I overheard a conversation between two women at a nearby table. One of them was talking about self-esteem and how it's not about being perfect, but about accepting who you are. She said, "Your self-esteem comes from within. It's how you see yourself, not how others see you." I was curious. I had always tried to seek approval from others, but hearing her words made me realize that my self-esteem was fragile because I let others define it for me. I wanted to understand more. That afternoon, I decided to take a long walk through the park. I thought about what I had heard and reflected on my own self-esteem. I began to ask myself, why did I feel so bad about myself? Was I really as unworthy as I thought? As I walked, I saw a woman sitting on a bench, smiling and talking to her friend. She looked confident, like she was at peace with herself. I realized something important. Confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling good about who you are, regardless of mistakes or flaws. That was when I understood what self-esteem really meant. It's not about others liking you, it's about liking yourself and accepting who you are. From that day on, I started to focus on building my self-esteem. I stopped comparing myself to others and began to appreciate my own strengths. I learned that self-esteem is a journey, not a destination. It's about recognizing your worth, even on days when you feel down. I started small, celebrating my achievements, no matter how tiny. I spoke kindly to myself and stopped putting myself down. Over time, I saw a change. My self-esteem grew, and so did my confidence. I understood now that true self-esteem comes from within, and it's about accepting yourself, flaws and all. The moment I stopped and breathed, I always felt like I was running through life. I was constantly busy, jumping from one task to another, never pausing to catch my breath. I didn't even notice how much I was missing until one day everything changed. It was a rainy afternoon and I was walking home from work. My mind was racing with thoughts about deadlines and plans. I couldn't focus on the world around me. The rain was falling softly and people were hurrying by, but I was lost in my head. As I passed a park, I noticed an older man sitting on a bench, staring at the trees. He seemed calm, completely still. I wondered how he could be so relaxed in the middle of such a busy world. I watched him for a moment and then something strange happened. I decided to sit down next to him. He smiled at me and said, "Sometimes the best way to find peace is to simply be present. That's what I call mindfulness." I was curious. I asked him what mindfulness meant. He explained, "Mindfulness is about focusing on the present moment without judgment. It's about being aware of your surroundings, your feelings, and your thoughts, but not letting them control you." I realized that I had been so caught up in everything that I had forgotten to live in the present. I was always thinking about what was next, never stopping to appreciate what was right in front of me. The man told me, "Start by noticing the little things around you. Feel the rain. Listen to the sound of the birds. Breathe slowly." That day, I learned the power of mindfulness. I started practicing it every day. I stopped rushing and began to appreciate the small moments in life. Mindfulness helped me feel calmer and more connected to the world. I realized that sometimes just breathing and being present is all we really need.
The hidden voice in my mind. I always thought I made decisions with my conscious mind. I'd carefully think about things, weigh the pros and cons, and then choose. But one night, something strange happened. It made me realize that there's more going on in my mind than I ever imagined. It all started when I went to bed, thinking about a big decision I had to make. I was torn between two job offers, and I couldn't figure out which one was right for me. I kept thinking about the details, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't decide. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was standing in a dark room, surrounded by voices. At first, I couldn't make out what they were saying. But then, one voice stood out. It was calm and confident, telling me to choose the job that felt right in my heart. When I woke up, I was shocked. It was like something deep inside me had already made the decision. I realized that the voice I heard in my dream wasn't just a random thought. It came from my subconscious. I started to understand that my subconscious mind was always working, guiding me in ways I didn't even notice. It was influencing my decisions, emotions, and actions without me being fully aware of it. Over the next few days, I began to pay more attention to my feelings and instincts. I realized that the subconscious is not just about dreams, but also about the small, quiet signals we get every day. The subconscious mind holds memories, desires, and fears that shape how we act and think. In the end, I chose the job that felt right, even though my conscious mind had doubts. And looking back, I realized that listening to my subconscious had been the best decision I could have made. The spark that ignited my motivation. I had always been someone who struggled with staying motivated. I'd start many projects, but somehow I could never finish them. I thought motivation was something that just came to you when you were inspired, but I was wrong. One day, I decided I needed a change. I was tired of feeling stuck, so I began to focus on finding the motivation to keep going. At first, it was hard. I didn't know where to start or how to find that push I needed. Then, I remembered a conversation I had with a friend. He told me, motivation doesn't just appear. You have to build it. This made me think. If I wanted to achieve anything, I had to create my own motivation. It wasn't just about waiting for the right moment. It was about taking action. So, I started setting small, achievable goals every day. At first, it was just waking up early, but over time, I built more tasks into my routine. As I completed each small goal, I felt a little more motivated. I realized that motivation didn't come from big moments of inspiration, it came from making progress, no matter how small. Soon, I began to see results. The more I pushed myself, the more my motivation grew. It wasn't something I could control with a single thought, but I could influence it by taking small steps every day. I understood now that motivation is not just a feeling you wait for, it's a result of your actions. Looking back, I see how far I've come. The motivation I once struggled to find is now something I create with every step I take, no matter how small it may seem.